Hello and welcome. I am Deji Badimasi and you're watching Politics Today. We want to thank you very much for joining us. And tonight we're focusing solely on the Edo State Governorship election, which has come and gone. A winner has emerged and a loser, of course, has emerged. Quite a number of losers. Just one person won the election, the incumbent governor, Comrade Oshiomhole. Of course, as you know, the election was quite interesting. In spite of the violent build-up to that election, on election day, everything went peacefully and very smoothly. The people turned out en masse to cast their vote. As a matter of fact, as early as 7 a.m. on election day, people were already at the polling unit waiting for polling staff, unlike in the past when you would have polling staff get to the polling unit before the voters. But in this case, the voters were there. Quite a number of them. One of the polling units, especially the first polling unit we went to, were there as early as 7 a.m. getting ready to set up. And you wouldn't believe it, we met quite a number of people who were really eager to cast their votes. Now, the question is, why did the people turn out en masse to cast their vote on election day? We do not know. Some people have said the reason is just because of the election. It's because of the contenders or the candidates taking part in the election. Some people said, well, the people were this time determined to cast their vote. They were determined to ensure that their votes counted. But let me just, let's take you back to the results once again. Of course, the results have been released, and there you have the results. The ACN winning it, Governor Oshiomhole polling a total number of 477,478 votes. Now look at Charles Ariave. Yeah, that's a very difficult name to pronounce, but I understand it's pronounced Ariave. Or some people would say Ariave. Of the PDP, he polled 144,235 votes. And, well, Solomon Edebiri of the ANPP coming a distant third. As a matter of fact, not even in the reckoning at all. As a matter of fact, on election day, there was this story, the night before the election, I should say, the story went round that Solomon Edebiri had stepped down for the ACN candidate, that's Governor Oshiomhole. But shortly before the election, he came out to debunk that rumor and said he was still very much in the race. Well, still very much in the race, but he ended up polling just a little over 3,000 votes. Very poor showing from him there. And then the other candidate is not doing well at all. Well, there quite a number of candidates altogether, about 6 or 7 of them. But at the end of the day, we all knew right from the very beginning that it was basically a two-horse race between the ACN candidate, Oshiomhole, and the PDP's candidate, retired General Charles Ariave. And, well, now let's show you the picture of what actually happened. The day the result was finally declared, that was 24 hours after the election. That was on Sunday the 15th. Now, when the results were announced, as a matter of fact, I want to believe the people of Edo State were glued to their TV sets, listening on the radio, and shortly after the results were announced, you wouldn't believe what happened. The governor himself was at a church when the results were announced, and we don't really know how information got around town that the governor was at his church worshiping, and before you knew it, as soon as the people got the results, they all stormed the church, and it was a huge celebration. Now, we're going to show you the very moment where the governor emerged from the church and what actually happened. Take a look. Well, there you have the spontaneous celebration that broke out shortly after the results were announced and Governor Adams Oshiomhole was declared the winner of the election. As you know by now that I was not the only one who covered the election. As a matter of fact, there were 3 of us spread across the 3 senatorial districts of Edo State that covered that election. Myself and I have 2 other guys, the 2 other guys who covered that election with me, sitting with me right here in the studio. Henry Ogunjimi, of course, our Channel TV correspondent, and Sheon Kimbaloye. Guys, let's look at this election. Now, I've just brought you here to very quickly share your experience about the election. Sheon, let me start with you. What exactly struck you about that election? Of course, that would not be the first election you would be covering.
Of course, one major thing is the turnout. And if you look at the time the voters came out for the election,
you were at Edo North.
I was in Edo North. Basically, I put my camp at Auchi. Okay, I was reaching out
from.
Which,
is supposed to be the biggest town.
The biggest town,
North,
exactly.
District,
and
yeah.
You see, people came out en masse. Apart from the fact that they came out en masse, the caliber of people that came out for that election, we're talking about feeble. The people who are handicapped, people, old people. We're talking about. I met a woman who was over 90 years, on crutches. Met people who were handicapped, the blind. A lot of people came out, and I was aghast. I was amazed by some of the people that came out. Even the young, they were not participating, but they were there to witness what was happening. Unlike some of the elections that I've seen and I've covered, where we have people who will be playing football around the streets, people will not come out. And, recently there was an election too, which we saw people not coming out. Yeah, but for Edo election, it was massive. And every polling unit and center that we went to, we saw a lot of people coming out. And the caliber, the kind of people that came out really was one of the things that people that you naturally would think may not be able to come out were out.
And this was quite surprising, Henry, because you look at the build-up to the election, the violence and all of that, the candidates talking very tough, and people, there was apprehension in the air. People thought, well, there was going to be violence and all of that. In spite of that, the people came out on that day. As a matter of fact, as journalists, we all thought people were not going to come out, but we were pleasantly surprised, with the huge turnout we saw that day. Tell me, you covered Edo Central Senatorial District. To tell me exactly what struck you and what you found very interesting about that area during the elections.
Yeah, thank you, Deji. Like I said during my reports, my live phone-in interviews, there in the Edo Central Senatorial District, that was believed to be one of the stronghold of the major opposition party.
Yeah, Tony Aneni.
Yeah, that's where the PDP strongman is from. But in Ekwoma, Irua, and Uromi, where I covered, the people came out. As a matter of fact, the day before the election, 2 days before the election, the people went about their businesses. And a lot of them talked about their peaceful coexistence before the advent of elections. And they were not ready to throw that away because of politics. So a lot of people came out to vote on the day of election. As a matter of fact, they pitched their tents. So there was a police station where I went to.
Okay, there were tents, canopies spreading out.
Instead of umbrellas. They didn't want to use umbrellas because they felt umbrellas
would be like campaigning for a particular political party, PDP.
So they pitched their tents. On one side, you have people saying they wanted to vote for the ACN, while some others say they wanted to vote for the PDP. But because they had this peaceful coexistence before the elections came, they didn't want to throw that away. But the people were also relaxed. In most of the polling stations where I visited, you had a picnic mood. People went about eating, sitting on the lawn. They waited. After accreditation, they waited to vote.
They didn't go home.
And they waited to see their votes count.
I know you did a report. I want us to take a look at one of the reports. You put together a report of what actually struck you in that election, Sheon. I want us to take a look at that report now. When we come back, we'll talk more about it. Let's take a look at Sheon's report and what actually struck him about that election.
Few weeks before the Edo Governorship election, there were fears that violence might mar the polls. Lives lost in the run-up to the election, and politicians pointing accusing fingers at each other. Security during the election was a big issue. Debates, reactions, and mixed feelings trailed the idea of deploying soldiers. Blood boiled and the atmosphere tense. On election day and the day before, soldiers mounted roadblocks and men in khakis dotted many spots in Edo State. Accreditation and the voting process, even the counting and the results compilation were under the watchful eyes of these men.
Well, I don't have any fears because for some days now we've been seeing so many security men, the police, the army, they're all around Edo State. So I believe security-wise, I believe the state has already taken control of that. So I'm not scared.
Okay. There's nothing to be scared about because we are law-abiding citizens.
All right. No, I'm not scared.
Why are you not scared?
Because soldiers will be on their own. So far, they are cool-headed and they are not disturbed. They are not harassing me. Why not? I'll go out and vote.
I'm scared.
Why were you scared?
But what should they? And it's going to be peaceful.
It's to protect you. So, and they are doing this based on what happened in the past.
If there is truth, there's no need for protection.
Call it the most peaceful or even the most successful election in Nigeria in recent times, and you may be right. No violence, no skirmish, no bloodshed. Very rare in elections of that magnitude in Nigeria, thanks to security operatives and of course INEC. The concern here is, do we really need to deploy large number of troops for the sake of elections? If it will bring peace, I guess we are left with no options. Sheung Okimbaloye, reporting for Channels Television News.
Sheung, I mean, very apt, no doubt. Security was tight, and you know, it was just the only governorship election taking place in the country. One would have imagined what the situation would have been if this governorship election was taking place all over the country. Of course, security would have been stretched. I mean, the military guys we saw there, the policemen. But sometimes you tend to get the feeling during elections that in Nigeria, when you organize elections, it's like you're going to war with the kind of security men you see.
I was almost telling you, I mean, before we left for Edo State, that don't we need to carry some bulletproof jackets or something? Because to me, at that time, there was a lot of tension in the air. And everybody, journalists, security operatives, even lawmakers, executive members in the state are all where everybody is standing to say there might be some violence. But something that was surprising to everybody was the fact that everything went peacefully. And the fact that it was a moment when the ACN wanted to come back and PDP wanted to say, we still on the ground. And so it was a lot of tension in the air. But at the end of the day, I saw a moment where the soldiers really took charge and people were not scared to go out. If you look at the presence of soldiers and how much debate we've seen in the run-up to the election about deployment of soldiers and the fact that people came out is something that was baffling.
But we also must confirm, I mean, we must, you know, confirm the fact that these soldiers and the policemen conducted themselves very well.
Absolutely.
Right, Henry? Was that the case?
Yes,
where you covered?
And most polling stations across the Edo Central Senatorial District. In fact, they kept some distance from the polling booths.
That is sure.
What they did was to man the gates, make sure anybody coming into the polling station was had a voter card.
Very good enough. Most of the schools that were used were fenced, so you wouldn't come into the schools without your voter's card.
Without your voter's card. And around those schools, you go to the back of the classrooms, the blocks, you find military men carrying weapons. They were not so close to the polling the booths. They were just around the polling station.
That is quite true.
That was, you know, that sort of assured the voters, gave them this assurance. They were so confident that nothing was going to happen. So after they did the accreditation, they stood back to vote, and after they voted, they also waited and to see their votes being counted.
Unfortunately, we haven't got much time because we have to move to the next segment, but let me just ask you this finally. Did the result come to you as a surprise? I'll start with you, Sheung.
Well, it didn't come to me as a surprise. But I must say, quickly before we go, that something came to me as a surprise. And I said to you that, look, Deji, if you have over 1 million registered voters, we have 17,000 invalid votes. There's a problem with elections in Nigeria.
It's a serious problem. Serious problem. Invalid votes. Henry, the results.
Well,
you look at the margin. Quite huge.
I wasn't so surprised.
Especially where you covered. It was supposed to be the battleground.
Yes, it was supposed to be the battleground, you know. But the people, even on election day, the people conducted themselves. You needed to see the agents of these two parties. They stood side by side. Some of them share the same surnames.
Oh, so we have families, brothers and sisters, you know, serving different political parties.
You can't take it away from ACN. Look at the whole of Benin. Even all around the Edo State, you could see posters of Adams Oshiomhole. He went around with chopper all around the state. He went to virtually every village in Edo State. But his campaign was massive.
The PDP candidate also campaigned. He said he campaigned.
Another striking thing was, if you go to Benin City, you have the campaign office of the ACN just adjacent that of the PDP. And you know, Deji, you were there on Sunday when the celebration broke out. That was a confirmation that the people actually voted.
It was really spontaneous because, I mean, the people who came out to celebrate, you could not call them ACN supporters or ACN members, even in the rain.
I mean, Oshiomhole, very popular in Edo State.
Very popular, I know that. And I just think that the most popular man actually won. But the reason he won, if you asked my opinion, I would say he won because of his performance in office. But that's just by the way. I leave that to our next set of guests who will be coming in to discuss. I want to thank you, gentlemen. Very good job in Edo State. If you're not blowing your trumpet, I'm blowing your trumpet for you. Good job, you did. Thank you very much.